Hey guys, what's up? It's Olivia. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about all the books I read this spring, and it was quite a lot. So yes, just like last season in winter when I did a winter reading wrap-up, this is the spring reading wrap-up. It is June 28th, if my brain is correct, and that means that we are a week into summer, and boy can I feel it. It is hot. So yes, with that, let's get into the spring reads. So the first book I read this spring was Beatried by Emily Henry, and the synopsis is, or the quick summary is, a romance writer who no longer believes in love and a literary writer stuck in a rut engage in a summer-long challenge that may just upend everything they believe about happily ever afters. So the two main characters are Augustus and January, and it is in a way a enemies to lovers story. It's very interesting. For a book that is supposed to be a cheesy romance, it has a lot of like really fun cliches that are aware that they're cliches, and they get turned on their head. There's also some interesting conversations about life. There are some content warnings on this one. There's grief, there's a little bit of sexual content, and then a death of a parent. And then, you know, there's some cancer, infidelity, child abuse, alcoholism, and vomit. So if any of those are triggers for you, I'm actually gonna list them on the screen right here for the next book. So that way you guys are well aware of them. Yeah, this is a really fun book. I highly recommend. I read another one of her books this season as well, and we'll talk about that one when we get to it. But I adored this book and I highly recommend it, and I gave it 5 stars. The next book I read was The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, and the description of this book is, raised in the age of heroes, Patroclus, an awkward young prince, has been exiled to the court of King Peleus and his perfect son Achilles. Despite their differences, Achilles befriends the shamed prince. I can't speak today. I have been traveling constantly for various family functions and other things, so please bear with me. Achilles befriends the shamed prince, and as they grow into young men skilled in the arts of war and medicine, their bond blossoms into something deeper. Despite the displeasure of Achilles' mother Thetis, a cruel sea goddess, but when word comes to that Helen of Sparta has been kidnapped, Achilles must go to the war in distant Troy and fulfill his destiny. Torn between love and fear for his friend, Patroclus goes with him, little knowing that the years that follow will test everything they hold dear. The internet claims that this book is heartbreaking, and it's definitely a sad read. The last page got me good. It was sad and I did cry, but it's not like gut-wrenching and like this, it's not that it's not epic. It is not as sad as people say it is, I'll say that. I really enjoyed it. I really like the way it's written. I love Achilles and Patroclus, or Patroclus, whatever his name is, together. I think they are so cute. Yeah, the last page is really sad, and it's totally worth the read. This has sent me on a huge Greek gods tangent. I really love reading about these stories, and also they're the basis for like all storytelling, so to see them told in a way that works for contemporary readers that isn't so bland and like it's coming out of a history book was really nice. So yay for Madeline Miller. I believe I gave this one like a 4.5, if not 5 stars, because I really enjoyed it. This next one I found in my sister's room. It is mine from when I was in middle school, so this was given to me by the school, but it's called The Greek Gods by Evslin, and Hoops. This is a very easy to understand middle grade retelling of the pantheon and the nature myth. I wanted more Greek legends, and so to find this was really nice because I needed a little bit more background, and I have a very like brief knowledge and like bare minimum knowledge of a lot of the Greek god stories. So yeah, I loved reading this. I'll leave a link if I can find this to purchase anywhere, because I think it's totally worth reading if you want to get more into mythology, because they're just so easy to understand. But of course it includes majority of the pantheon, and then the nature myths, one about Orpheus, which if you know me at all, you know how I feel about Hadestown and what a wonderful show that is. So yeah, but I'm definitely looking for more Greek mythology very soon. This next book I read was A Monster by Walter Dean Myers. This book, the description says, 16-year-old Steve Harmon is on trial for murder. A Harlem drugstore owner was shot and killed in his store, and the word is that Steve served as the lookout. Guilty or innocent, Steve becomes a pawn in the hands of the system. cluttered with cynical authority figures and unscrupulous inmates who will turn in anyone to shorten their own sentence. For the first time, Steve is forced to think about who he is as he faces prison, where he may spend all his tomorrows of his life. As a way of coping with horrific events that entangle him, Steve, an amateur filmmaker, decides to transcribe his trial into a script. Just like in the movies, he writes it all down, scene by scene. The story of how his whole life was turned around in an instant. But despite his efforts, reality is blurred and his vision obscured until he can no longer tell who he is or what is the truth. The compelling novel is Walter Dean Meyer's writing at its best. So, I read this in middle school for summer reading and I remember enjoying it, but I don't think that I had the wherewithal at 13 to understand that because it is a gripping story. Because when I read it when I was 13, I think my focus on was, did he do it or not? And not, hey, you're facing all of these pre-existing prejudices and that could ultimately end up finding you guilty even if you didn't do it because people are racist. So there's all of this. It is a fantastic read. It's easy to read because it is written like a screenplay, and Netflix is going to adapt this into a movie. I believe the trailer is out if you would like to check it out, but I highly recommend reading it before you watch the movie because I think that writing a book like a screenplay is it's a fun take on the format and it works really well. So this is a 5-star read. I love it. The next 2 books I read were It's a duology. It's Fable and Namesake by Adrienne Young. I love these stories, and let me give you the synopsis on the story graph. Trader, fighter, survivor. As the daughter of the most powerful trader in the Narrows, the sea is the only home 17-year-old Fable has ever known. It's been 4 years since her father abandoned her on the legendary island filled with thieves and little food. To survive, she must keep to herself, learn to trust no one, and rely on the unique skills her mother taught her. The only thing that keeps her going is the goal of getting off the island, finding her father and demanding her rightful place beside him and his crew. To do so, Fable enlists the help of a younger trader named Wes to get her off the island and across the Narrows to her father. But Fable soon finds that Wes isn't who he seems. Together they will have to survive more than the treacherous storms that haunt the Narrows if they're going to stay alive. I compare Fable to a female William Turner. She's a bit feistier. Obviously, she could be William Turner and Elizabeth Swann's child in personality, and I adored this story. I just loved everything about it. I love pirates, and while she's not exactly pirate, it's pirate-esque. It's about that time period and the era, and I really like that there is a found family trope. It's just a wonderful duology, and the second one, like I was saying in a review on my Bookstagram, follow me at Liv's Lovely Library, that this could have been one book, and I stand by that, but you know, how do you resist a covers that look like this? So of course you're gonna break it up into 2. I gave both of these 5 stars, I believe, if not 4.5 or something along those lines. Probably closer to 4, just because they can lean a little young. They are young adult. So for me, I would like to find more pirate books that are like this, but maybe a little older in content and in reading level. But needless to say, these are fantastic. I would recommend these to just about anyone. Next we have Cersei. This is another book by Madeline Miller. Like I said, I really enjoy her writing and I really enjoy the Greek myths. So here is this is a long description. Oh, bear with me, guys. This is oof. In the house of Helios, god of the sun and the mightiest of the Titans, a daughter is born. But Cersei is a strange child, not powerful like her father, nor viciously alluring like her mother. Turning to the world of mortals for companionship, she discovers that she does possess power, the power of witchcraft, which can transform rivals into monsters and menace the gods themselves. Threatened, Zeus banishes her to a deserted island where she hones her occult craft, tames wild beasts, and crosses paths with many of the most famous figures in all of mythology, including the Minotaur, Daedalus, and his doomed son Icarus, the murderous Medea, and of course, wily Odysseus. And there's more. So this book is sad, period. It ends on a light note, but I found myself really overly relating to Cersei. She is this outcast amongst her family, and like she learns to love herself through her solitude, which is something that I really relate to and that I really love. But at the same time, the thing about being in solitude is that it's boring. Not much, like the things that happen are like these big epic things because it's Greek mythology. But at the same time, a lot of the book is spent with her on her island and like really being at peace with the things that she does and kind of like the tedium or the tediousness. Tedium? I'm gonna Google that. Is tedium a word? Tedium is a word. It's the state of being tedious. So the tediousness, is that also a word? Monotony, that's the better word. The monotony of what she does day to day. And so it wasn't like super thrilling or exciting to read. I certainly preferred the action of Song of Achilles, but that's not to say that this isn't a fantastic story or a fantastic book about self-love and growth, and it's just a good story, and it's a story that doesn't get told very often. You always hear about Odysseus because of the Odyssey, and you hear about the Minotaur from her weird as shit sister. Yeah, so this is really good as well. This one was definitely like a 3.54 stars kind of thing. Next, we have Shadow and Bone. I won't talk too much about this. Click the eye up there to see my full review of this book, as well as the first season of the TV show. But I'll read the description in case you are completely unaware of what this story is about or you haven't watched that video yet. Surrounded by enemies, the once great nation of Rabka has been torn in two by the Shadowfold, a swath of near impenetrable darkness crawling with monsters who feast on human flesh. Now its fate may rest on the shoulders of one lonely refugee. Alina Starkov has never been good at anything, but when her regiment is attacked on the fold and her best friend is brutally injured, Alina reveals a dormant power that saves his life, a power that could be the key to setting her war-ravaged country free. Wretched from everything she knows, Alina is whisked away to the royal court to be trained by a member of the Grisha, the magical elite led by the mysterious Darkling, played by Ben Barnes. Yet nothing in this lavish world is what it seems, with darkness looming and an entire kingdom depending on her untamed power. Alina will have to confront the secrets of the Grisha and the secrets of her heart. So it's really good. There's a bit of politics, there's a lot of romance, there's a lot of magic. So the magic system is really what I love about this book and this world that Leigh Bardugo has created. So the Grisha and their powers act a lot like the benders in Avatar: The Last Airbender. People can summon, they're called summoners, and people can summon air, water, fire, light, and dark. There are the Heartrenderers and Etherealkai, I believe is what they're called. You bend blood. You can either heal someone or you can stop their heart. Or in some cases, there is someone called a tailor, and they can alter your image, like your physical appearance. Those are really cool. And then there's the fabricators, and they make things out of metal and other objects in the story. So I think that this world is fantastic. It's a really tropey chosen one story in terms of our main characters, Alina and Mal, but the Darkling, the villain, is my favorite part of this entire trilogy. Yeah, I won't say too much more. Go watch that video. It is fantastic. So the next thing I read, I listened to the audiobook for Norse mythology. I can never say it, I always end up saying North. Norse mythology by Neil Gaiman. And it's a few stories within that pantheon, and people had recommended this book to me because they also really like mythology, and I was like, cool, I'll check out this mythology as well. And I think that I just don't like Neil Gaiman as a writer, because this is now the second audiobook of his that I've listened to / read, and I don't know if it's his narration and I can tell you that the way that he writes some women, it's just not my favorite, and it works within the context of the story, so I can't be like, he's horrible like Stephen King, like how Stephen King writes women, but I can't say that he's my favorite. I would like to still read Coraline. That is a children's novel, and I'm definitely not going to listen to the audiobook of that one because I don't want to hear him narrate it. I really just I'm obsessed with that movie, so I would like to have it in my head without the inflection of his voice. So, and it can be my own interpretation of that. But yeah, it wasn't my favorite. He's just not my favorite, but that's okay. because not every author is going to be for you. So then the next book I read was book 2 in the Grishaverse and of the Shadow and Bone trilogy. This is Siege and Storm. We meet Prince Nikolai in this one, and oh yes, what a wonderful character. Alina goes through it's less plot driven and more character driven, this one, which a lot of people say is really boring, and I will say that there's a lot of information and like inner monologue in this one, so it definitely has middle book syndrome, but that doesn't mean that it's bad. It wasn't my favorite, but I did really enjoy the character growth. I enjoyed the way that Alina has really honed in on her power and is almost a little power hungry, and I like that she has to really decide, or she starts to begin to decide, what is she gonna do with this power, how she feels about the Darkling, how she feels about Mal, how she feels about Nikolai. This is the biggest, like, this trilogy has one of the biggest games of kiss, marry, kill, and without giving anything away, the outcome was not to my liking in terms of the relationship status of the characters, but that's not important. It's not the most important facet of the story. It's not a romance first. It is a fantasy adventure book first and a romance third, if anything. So yeah, I enjoyed this, but it's definitely like you gotta work to get through it to get to the next book in the trilogy, which is the next one I read, which is Ruin and Rising. There's a saying in this book that comes up that is just the dumbest thing I've ever read. And again, this is YA, so it's fine. I'm more than willing to let dumb stuff like that slide because it just exists within the world of the book. I mean, it's the final book in the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I really can't wait to see how this, of all things, comes to the screen when we get to season 3 of Shadow and Bone. Season 2 is in production. I'm so excited. Pre-production right now, but I am so excited. And yeah, I think that Leigh Bardugo did a good job of really like kind of, there's a resurrection trope in here, but I think it's done in an interesting way and the outcome is very interesting. I'm trying not to give spoilers because it is a worthy, how do I put it? It is the ultimate wrap up to this story, and you know, how I feel about certain plot points or certain sayings is beside the point because I did really thoroughly enjoy this series from beginning to end. And yeah, I highly recommend it if you are looking for a fun trilogy to read about magic and all of that. So it has been compared to Harry Potter, and there are certainly elements that are Harry Potter-esque, but I think it stands on its own. And the TV show, like I said 1 billion times and I'll continue to scream from the rooftops, is phenomenal. The next book I read was Yolk by Mary H.K. Choi, and here's the description for you. Jane and June Bayek, please excuse my pronunciation. The names are Korean. I have zero idea how anything is pronounced in there, and there is no pronunciation within the book itself. But yes, Korean American girls. Jane and June are nothing alike. June's 3 years older, a classic firstborn, know-it-all narc with a problematic finance job and an equally soulless apartment, according to Jane. Jane is an emotionally stunted, self-obsessed basket case who lives in squalor, has egregious taste in men, and needs to get to class and stop wasting mom and dad's money, if you ask June. Once thick as thieves, these sisters who moved from Seoul to San Antonio to New York together now don't want anything to do with each other. That is until June gets cancer, and Jane becomes the only one who can help her. Flung together by circumstance, housing woes, and family secrets, comma, will the sisters to learn more about each other than they're willing to confront. This is a question, wait, oh, that needs to be a semicolon, excuse me. Flung together by circumstance, housing woes, and family secrets, will the sisters learn more about each other than they're willing to confront? And what if, while helping June, Jane has to confront the fact that maybe she's sick too? I have a younger sister. We have similar personality, not exact, like, at all. I don't think I'm anything. I think I'm similar to June, but less, the story is told from Jane's point of view, but June sucks a lot. But I have similar character traits, and I'm big enough to admit that about myself. It's told from the younger sister's perspective. It's a really good story about sisters. If you at all wish to check that out, I'm a sucker for a story about sisters. It's a good story. It has an unclear ending, trigger warning for cancer, eating disorders, and just family drama in general. I feel the need to vocalize this one because there is a very graphic scene with the eating disorder that is very hard to read. And that's all I'll say about that. I think that this book so this book is billed as young adult because new adult is not an officially recognized genre, or like, I don't even think young adult's truly a genre. It's more of like an age rating like we have for movies. So new adult is not considered a official age rating or a genre yet, but it certainly skews a little older. The girls are in college. One of them is out of college and working full time. So I think anyone over the age of 20 would really get into this book. Not that 18-year-olds and under couldn't empathize and sympathize and have something to learn from this book. I just think that some of the content might go over their head a little bit. But yeah, I really liked this. I recommend this one as well. Hard to read, but worth reading. So then I started the audiobooks for the Throne of Glass series, and I just finished, or a little while ago, I finished the first book. So here is the description of Throne of Glass, which I always end up skewing and calling Throne of Grass or Throne of Ass. I don't understand why, it just keeps happening. So in a land without magic, 18-year-old assassin Celaena Sardothien is summoned to the castle if she defeats 23 hardened warriors, all men. In a competition, she will be released from prison to serve as the king's champion. The crown prince will provoke her, the captain of the guard will protect her, but something evil dwells in the castle and it's there to kill. When her competitors start dying, Celaena's fight for freedom becomes a fight for survival and a desperate quest to save her world. This book is badass. Celaena Sardothien is an incredible character. Dorian is so entertaining. Chaol I have other feelings about because I'm on the second book, but it's a good story. I highly recommend this. People said it was bad, and I certainly see how it's not like the most well-written story. There are certain things that get more attention than others should. It's romance heavy because it's Sarah J. Maas. And yeah, but I am thoroughly enjoying it. I really enjoy Sarah J. Maas's writing. It's not perfect by any means, but she really does a good job of writing super compelling characters, and you just relate to them and you love them and you feel for them, or at least I do. And I think she really has a grip on these fantasy worlds that she creates. So I'm very excited to keep going with the rest of this series. Next is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. This is an interesting one. One cold February evening in 1971, at the back of a dark London alley in a hidden apothecary shop, Nella awaits her newest customer. Once a respectful healer, Nella now uses her knowledge for a darker purpose, selling well-disguised poisons to desperate women who would kill to be free of the men in their lives. But when her new patron turns out to be a precocious 12-year-old named Eliza Fanning, an unexpected friendship sets in motion a string of events that jeopardizes Nella's world and threatens to expose the many women whose names are written in her register. It's told from 3 points of view, so it's got Nella and Eliza, and then this is the third one. In the present-day London, aspiring historian Caroline Pacewell spends her 10th wedding anniversary alone, reeling from the discovery of her husband's infidelity when she finds an old apothecary vial near the river. Is it Thames or is it Thames? Or is it James? The very famous river in London. She can't resist investigating, only to realize she's found a link to the unsolved apothecary murders that haunted London over 2 centuries ago. As she deepens her research, Caroline's life collides with Nella's and Eliza's in a stunning twist of fate, and not everyone will survive. So this book is really good at building suspense. I really enjoyed Caroline's point of view as she was trying to figure out what her next step in life was, and what her interest in history, and I really relate to a lot of that and the choices that she made and why she makes certain choices. I really enjoyed that. But the conversations between Nella and Eliza were infinitely infuriating, particularly when they're told from Eliza's point of view, because there's a big element of dramatic irony and a miscommunication trope. Like, people just don't accurately communicate what is happening to the 12-year-old because they look down on her, which maybe there's a point to that, but it was a little frustrating to read those parts because it was just, yeah, it's just tough to get to when you're like, I know what the person is talking about, but this point of view doesn't. And if things were just explained clearer to this person's point of view, there wouldn't be this dumb conflict on top of the main conflict, because the girl just didn't understand. And I enjoyed that there was an unclear ending, because unclear endings are the best. It keeps you guessing, it keeps you thinking. However, because it's trying so hard to be mysterious, it literally feels like a try hard. It's like, oh, yeah, I guess I saw that coming, or yeah, it's like, yeah, I guess I didn't see that coming, but like for what? Like you chose that twist for why? But the lead up to that twist ending was really good, and then Caroline's has another minor conflict on top of her relationship status and like trying to figure out her life conflict because of a miscommunication. And it's just not a trope that I enjoy reading. It's something that really infuriates me. I've got enough miscommunication in my own life and I don't need to read about it. But with that being said, I do think that it's well written. I do think the suspense is well done. I really enjoyed Caroline's point of view until we got to the stupid. And I also just enjoy stuff like that. Like an apothecary in the 1800s, or excuse me, 18th century, is an interesting premise for a book, and I would like to read more historical fiction because I genuinely enjoy history. It's something I've always enjoyed, and it's almost what I majored in college, except I chose film because my history professor sucked. But it is definitely something that is worth looking for, and I'm looking forward to reading, like I said, more historical fiction. Olivia, you're repeating yourself. I know, I need to move on to the next story, don't I? Yes, you do. Like I said, I've been traveling. I am losing my fucking mind. We've circled back to Emily Henry. This is her newest release. This is People We Meet on Vacation, and here's the description. 2 best friends, 10 summer trips, 1 last chance to fall in love. Wow, that's it's going right for it. Poppy and Alex and Poppy. They have nothing in common. She's a wild child. He wears khakis. I wear short skirts. She wears t-shirt. Wait. Doesn't matter. The Taylor Swift lyrics. She has insatiable wanderlust. He prefers to stay home with a book. And somehow, ever since a fateful car ride home from college many years ago, they're the very best of friends. For most of the year, they live far apart. She's in New York City and he's in this blah, 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 blah. I'm sorry, you don't need to know that. It's not enemies to lovers. It's a contemporary romance. It involves a lot of miscommunication. It also involves a character that I'm not the biggest fan of. Poppy annoys me quite a bit, actually. And I think that Alex needs to have a bit more backbone and not give her everything that she wants just because. I really enjoy Emily Henry. I think that she writes really good books. I was hooked in from the very beginning because like the whole first page is just talking about like how you're on vacation, you're who you can be whoever, and like and it's like refreshing for the soul, and I was like, sick, I'm in. And then like as we delved more into like the past summers from these 2 people, I was just like, okay, like mas rapido, like let's get to the, like what's the point here? Like we all know they're gonna end up together. And we knew that the characters in Beatried were gonna end up together, but there was something much more organic and interesting about the way that they got together versus this, because they learned to see things from each other's perspective, and in this one, it was just Poppy got her way. Yeah, it was really infuriating. Not infuriating, it just wasn't what I wanted to read. I wanted to feel like fluttery and light and fluffy and like just kind of being a romantic sap, and this book didn't make me feel that way. It actually felt a lot like reading a toxic relationship, so I wasn't super into it. I will buy another book from Emily Henry because I think that she has the capacity to write another book that I really like, but this one was not for me, and that is okay because she's still an author that I enjoy reading. The next book I'm so excited about, this is my Pride Month pick. This is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston, which I said that weird. If you know from last season, I not only ranted and raved about it in my wrap up, but I also did a whole video on her first book, Red, White, and Royal Blue. She writes queer love stories, and I love all of them. So let me read the synopsis about this one because I adored it. 5-star read. Casey McQuiston can do no wrong. For cynical 23-year-old August moving, it's on this, I don't know why I read it off of the computer when I've got the backs of the books. Don't ask. For cynical 23-year-old August, moving to New York City is supposed to prove her right. That things like magic and cinematic love stories don't exist, and the only smart way to go through life is alone. She can't imagine how waiting tables at a 24-hour pancake diner and moving in with too many weird roommates could possibly change that, and there's certainly no chance of her subway commute being anything more than a daily trudge through boredom and electrical failures. But then there's this gorgeous girl on the train. Jane. Dazzling, charming, mysterious, impossible Jane. Jane with her rough edges and swoopy hair and soft smile, showing up in a leather jacket to save August's day, when she needed it most. August's subway crush becomes the best part of her day, but pretty soon she discovers there's one big problem. Jane doesn't just look like an old school punk rocker. She's literally displaced in time from the 1970s, and August is going to have to use everything she tried to leave in her own past to help her. Maybe it's time to start believing in some things after all. So I adored this. So for those of you who don't know, I think I've said it a couple of times here, but the 60s and 70s are some of my favorite decades. And when I was growing up, I actually was really interested in the punk scene of the 1970s, with movies like The Runaway starring Dakota Fanning and Kristen Stewart, to Joan Jett herself, and a lot of that. And that is Jane, period. So I really enjoyed hearing about her life and how she grew up. There is this fantasy element to it, right? So you gotta suspend disbelief when you read this book. But it's just a cute love story, and I really like watching their relationship blossom, and I also like that it is cross-generational. Obviously things like that don't apply to real life, especially because it's some weird electrical, static, space-time continuum thing. It's all very interesting to read about though, and just how they fall in love is fantastic. And this is a phenomenal book. I can't say more good things about it. It made my heart flutter. It also has a found family trope, which is my favorite. I'll say it again and again and again. If a book has found family, I love it. So I love this book. Another 5-star read. Fan-frickin-tastic. And now we're on to my current reads. I'm kind of in the middle of a reading slump. I haven't super wanted to read all the time, so I've been kind of like trudging through my current reads, which I will tell you what they are in a second. Right now we have Six of Crows. I'm in the middle of this duology. I am on part 5. I have been doing reading reaction, like 60-second clips on my TikTok. Follow me there, Liv's Lovely Library, same as the Instagram. These characters made it into the Shadow and Bone TV show, so they're getting like prequels with the show, which is very exciting. So I'm excited to continue reading the actual story. But let me tell you what it's about. Ketterdam, a bustling hub of international trade where anything can be had for the right price. And no one knows that better than criminal prodigy Kaz Brecker. Kaz is offered a chance at a deadly heist that could make him rich beyond his wildest dreams, but he can't pull it off alone. A convict with a thirst for revenge, a sharpshooter who can't walk away from a wager, a runaway with a privileged past, a spy known as the Wraith, a heart-renderer, like the one who can, stop your heart, good old Nina, using her magic to survive the slums, and a thief with a gift for unlikely escapes. Kaz's crew are the only ones who might stand between the world and destruction if they don't kill each other first. This story, no spoilers, but what sets this story in motion is the fact that the Grisha are currently being tested on for this wild drug that is basically the equivalent to meth. It is insane. It makes them super strong, and they just lose their minds, and it's so addictive, and they're trying to stop the person who made it. It is wild. But the interesting thing is that this story is very character driven. All of these characters, their backstories are so integral to what makes them tick and why they want to pull off this heist. And I won't spoil too much, but it is phenomenal. The way that this is written is a huge improvement from Shadow and Bone. So if you are someone who finds Shadow and Bone boring, which I totally get, and boring and tropey, this is anything but that. It is in fact the opposite. It is multiple point of views. It's not just first person. And yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm just not really feeling like reading all that often, but I will get through it and I will enjoy it. Fantastic. And then let me get to the last one. I'm currently in the middle of an audiobook as well. Like I said, I was listening to the audiobooks for Throne of Glass series. So now I am on Crown of Midnight. I'm doing the romantic version, so I think I read Assassin's Blade next instead of Heir of Fire. I think that's the next one. One of those two is the next one, and I'll keep you updated next time. Without spoiling too much, because I think this description will spoil some of Throne of Glass. Selena is on another quest to figure things out, and because magic was taken from her world, it's slowly seeping back in, and she has to uncover why it's not there and how that relates to her, and a lot of the arguing amongst the world. It's actually much more political than, say, A Court of Thorns and Roses, even though romance is still a huge part of it, and that will always be a part of Sarah J. Maas's writing, and it actually takes up a lot of the story when there should be more emphasis on plot. This is why people say that the first 3 books are bad, I'm now realizing. Anyway, yeah, the focus is on the wrong thing right now, but I think that as I continue reading, I'm about at the halfway point, things will improve. but I am really enjoying it. I will keep going, and yeah, that's it, guys. That is it. Those are all of the books I'm reading, plus the 2 that I am currently reading. Let me know what your favorite book you read this spring was, and let me know if you are interested in reading any of these books. I will leave links in the description where you can pick up copies of these books. Always see your local bookstores, however, if you can. And that is it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please follow me on Instagram and also Twitter. Do not have Twitter. Don't go looking for me there. I can't stand that platform. TikTok and Instagram. And here, of course, click the subscribe button, thumbs up, comment, all those internety things that help me, help you, and I will see you guys next week. Bye!